The thing about working on frontier research outposts was that no one told you about the part where half-dead alien warriors might crash land on your doorstep, bleeding from multiple wounds and looking like they'd gone 10 rounds with something that had far too many teeth. This was the thought bouncing around Dr. Maddox Quinn's head as he stared at the 7-foot-tall reptilian humanoid currently bleeding purple ichor all over his laboratory floor. "Well," Quinn muttered, running a hand through his perpetually disheveled hair, "this definitely wasn't in the employee handbook." Technically, Outpost 37 Delta was supposed to be studying xenobotanical adaptations on this unremarkable moon orbiting an equally unremarkable gas giant in the Proxima Lyrae system. Technically, the Outpost personnel consisted of Quinn and his 2 research assistants, both of whom were currently on the supply run that would take them away for another 3 days. And technically, according to all diplomatic channels, this sector was uninhabited by sentient life. The massive alien warrior sprawled across Quinn's laboratory floor begged to differ on that last point. "You're a long way from home, aren't you, big guy?" Quinn circled the alien cautiously. The being's respirations were shallow and irregular, the purple blood pulsing from multiple lacerations across its scaled hide. Elaborate, almost ceremonial armor was cracked and broken in several places, revealing more wounds beneath. Quinn's emergency beacon had been activated the moment the alien craft had come screaming through the atmosphere, trailing smoke and debris before crash landing 2 kilometers from the outpost. Standard protocol dictated non-engagement with unknown species until proper first contact procedures could be established. Quinn had never been particularly good at following protocol. "So, you're dying," he said conversationally to the unconscious warrior as he gathered medical supplies. "And I'm a botanist, not a xenobiologist." "Well, technically I am a xenobiologist, but I specialize in plants, not 7-foot lizard people with anger management issues and cool armor." The alien's only response was a rattling breath that sounded ominously final. Quinn's scanner indicated massive blood loss. Whoever this being was, they were circling the drain fast. The warrior's physiology was reptilian but with mammalian characteristics, including a 4-chambered heart and, crucially, a circulatory system not entirely unlike a human's. "This is either the dumbest thing I've ever done or the start of a really bad joke," Quinn muttered as he prepared an emergency transfusion kit. Xenobotanist walks into a bar with an alien warrior's blood. The standard medical database contained nothing about this species, unsurprisingly. Quinn's own blood was type O negative, universal donor for humans, but completely unknown in its effects on giant reptilian warriors from outer space. He ran a quick compatibility test, expecting instant coagulation or some other dramatic rejection. Instead, the samples mingled with only minimal reaction. "That's not possible," Quinn whispered, running the test again. The result was the same. Somehow, his blood was compatible enough with the alien's physiology that it might keep them alive long enough for their own healing processes to kick in. Decision time. "For the record," Quinn said to his lab's audio log, "if this kills you, I'm really sorry. And if this kills me, well, I won't be around to be sorry, but consider this my preemptive apology." He rolled up his sleeve and inserted the first needle into his arm. The alien's eyes snapped open as the first drops of human blood entered its system. Those eyes were nothing like Quinn had expected, not cold reptilian slits, but startlingly intelligent orbs of gold, with vertical pupils that widened in what could only be shock. The warrior tried to speak, a series of clicks and hisses emerging from its throat before it collapsed back into unconsciousness. "Great bedside manner I've got," Quinn sighed as the transfusion continued. "Don't worry, I'm not trying to kill you, though history suggests first contact scenarios rarely end well for at least one party involved." Outside, the alien's crash site continued to smolder against the purple-hued sky. Quinn wondered what had attacked the warrior, and whether it might come looking to finish the job. "Just to be clear," he told the unconscious alien, "if whatever did this to you shows up here, I'm absolutely throwing you under the bus. Professional courtesy only extends so far." The transfusion continued for nearly an hour, Quinn feeling progressively lightheaded as he gave far more blood than any medical professional would recommend. By the time he disconnected the tubing, his hands were shaking and his vision swimming. That's probably enough, he mumbled, applying pressure to the alien's wounds and his own puncture site. Now we wait and see if I've created a diplomatic incident or saved a life. Ideally both. I've always been an overachiever. Quinn managed to drag himself to the storage locker, extracting emergency rations and downing a glucose solution to counteract the blood loss. He set up monitoring equipment, managed to heave himself onto a nearby cot, and promptly passed out. He dreamed of stars and battles and ancient civilizations with technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look like children's toys. Strange visions of massive ships gliding through the darkness between worlds, of ceremonial chambers where scaled beings moved in perfect coordination, of a culture so ancient and complex that his human mind could barely grasp its intricacies. More disturbing were the flashes of combat, of the warrior facing enemies with too many limbs and glowing eyes, of desperate battles amid the debris of shattered vessels. He felt the warrior's pain, determination, and a fierce pride that transcended species barriers. When consciousness finally returned, Quinn's head pounded with the worst hangover of his life, multiplied by 10 and with a side order of existential dread. His mouth felt like he'd been gargling sand, and every muscle protested as he attempted to sit up. "For the record," Quinn said to his lab's audio log, "if this kills you, I'm really sorry. And if this kills me, well, I won't be around to be sorry, but consider this my preemptive apology." He rolled up his sleeve and inserted the first needle into his arm. The alien's eyes snapped open as the first drops of human blood entered its system. Those eyes were nothing like Quinn had expected. Not cold reptilian slits, but startlingly intelligent orbs of gold with vertical pupils that widened in what could only be shock. The warrior tried to speak, a series of clicks and hisses emerging from its throat before it collapsed back into unconsciousness. "Great bedside manner I've got," Quinn sighed as the transfusion continued. "Don't worry, I'm not trying to kill you, though history suggests first contact scenarios rarely end well for at least one party involved." Outside, the alien's crash site continued to smolder against the purple-hued sky. Quinn wondered what had attacked the warrior and whether it might come looking to finish the job. "Just to be clear," he told the unconscious alien, "if whatever did this to you shows up here, I'm absolutely throwing you under the bus. Professional courtesy only extends so far." The transfusion continued for nearly an hour, Quinn feeling progressively lightheaded as he gave far more blood than any medical professional would recommend. By the time he disconnected the tubing, his hands were shaking and his vision swimming. "That's probably enough," he mumbled, applying pressure to the alien's wounds and his own puncture site. "Now we wait and see if I've created a diplomatic incident or saved a life. Ideally both. I've always been an overachiever." Quinn managed to drag himself to the storage locker, extracting emergency rations and downing a glucose solution to counteract the blood loss. He set up monitoring equipment, managed to heave himself onto a nearby cot, and promptly passed out. He dreamed of stars and battles and ancient civilizations with technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look like children's toys. When Quinn woke 12 hours later, the alien warrior was sitting cross-legged beside his cot, golden eyes fixed on him with unnerving intensity. "Oh good," Quinn croaked. "You're not dead. That would have been awkward to explain in my report." The warrior tilted its head. Her head, Quinn realized, noting subtle physiological markers. She placed a clawed hand over her chest, then extended it toward Quinn in what seemed like a gesture of profound significance. "Kra'Vex," she said, the word emerging as a resonant multi-tone sound. Quinn. Dr. Maddox Quinn." He mimicked her gesture. "Though I usually go by Mad." Appropriate given the circumstances. Kra'Vex's expression remained unreadable, but she reached out with surprising gentleness and touched the inside of Quinn's elbow where the transfusion needle had been. Then she touched her own arm in the same spot. "Blood giver," she said, her voice processing human language with remarkable speed. "You shared your essence with Kra'Vex. It was either that or watch you die on my floor, which seemed rude considering we hadn't been properly introduced." Quinn sat up slowly, fighting dizziness. "How are you even speaking my language?" Kra'Vex tapped the side of her elongated skull. Neural adaptation, your blood, unusual properties, accelerated learning. She stood in a fluid motion that belied her massive size. The wounds that had been life-threatening just hours ago were now closed, with only faint purple lines indicating they had ever existed. That's not how blood works, Quinn muttered, scientific curiosity overriding his caution. That's not how any of this works. Blood is life. Blood is memory. Blood is knowledge. Kra'Vex's golden eyes narrowed. You do not know what you have done, Quinn, who is called mad. That sounds ominous. You have saved the Blood-Marshal of the Tzari Dominion, the highest warrior caste of the 17 systems. Kra'Vex's expression shifted subtly. And you have initiated a blood bond of the deepest significance. Quinn blinked slowly. So, I've committed some kind of cultural taboo? Because that would be very on-brand for me. Kra'Vex made a sound that might have been a laugh. No, you have done something no non-Tzari has ever done. You have given lifeblood freely to a Dominion warrior, and your blood was accepted. She touched the purple scars on her arms. I live because of you. Well, good. That was rather the point. Quinn stood carefully, noting that his own recovery seemed unusually advanced as well. Though I have to say, I'm a scientist, not a diplomat. If you're expecting some kind of formal first contact protocol, I'm woefully unprepared. Protocol is unnecessary between blood-bonded. Kra'Vex moved to the laboratory window, looking out at the alien landscape. My ship transmitted emergency coordinates before impact. The Dominion fleet will arrive within 2 planetary rotations. Quinn choked. Fleet? As in warships? As in potentially misinterpret the situation and reduce this outpost to radioactive dust, fleet? They will not harm you, Kra'Vex turned back to him. You are blood-bonded to a Blood-Marshal. To harm you would be to harm me, and to harm me would be to harm the Dominion itself. Oh, well, that's reassuring. Quinn ran diagnostic scans on himself and found unusual cellular activity that definitely warranted further study. So what happens when your people arrive? I'm not exactly authorized to negotiate interspecies treaties. Kra'Vex's head tilted again in that bird-like gesture of consideration. You will come with me to the Dominion Homeworld. The blood bond must be acknowledged by the sovereign caste. I will. What now? Quinn blinked rapidly. I can't just leave. I have research, responsibilities, superiors who expect reports, and a truly sad collection of xenobotanical samples that need cataloging. The alien warrior's expression remained unreadable, but something like amusement flickered in those golden eyes. Your priorities are unusual, blood-giver, says the 7-foot reptilian space warrior to the human who just performed an emergency xenotransfusion with no medical training. Quinn sighed and ran a hand through his hair. I suppose your fleet will arrive regardless of my feelings on the matter. They will. And they'll be significantly less friendly if I decline your invitation. They would not understand such a rejection. It would be problematic. Right. Quinn pulled up his Outpost's communication console. Then I should probably warn my superiors that I'm about to commit another half-dozen protocol violations. Might as well go for the high score. As promised, the Tzari fleet arrived 48 hours later. Quinn had spent the intervening time learning what he could about Kra'Vex and her species, though the warrior seemed more interested in human culture, absorbing information at a rate that bordered on unsettling. She explained that she had been on a sacred pilgrimage when her ship was attacked by the Vrex, ancient enemies of the Tzari. The explanation for why a high-ranking military leader was alone on a small vessel remained vague, something about blood trials and ancestral communion that Quinn suspected lost significant context in translation. What became increasingly clear, however, was that Quinn's impulsive act of medical intervention had profound cultural significance beyond simply saving a life. The concept of blood bonding seemed central to Tzari society, with complex hierarchies and relationships defined by the ritual sharing of blood. So let me get this straight, Quinn said as they watched the approaching fleet on the Outpost rudimentary scanners. By giving you my blood, I've essentially become, what? Family? A vassal? Some kind of bonded pair? There is no human equivalent, Kra'Vex replied. The closest concept might be one who is of my blood but not of my clutch, a chosen kin with obligations and privileges equal to birth bonds. And this is a big deal because no non-Tzari has ever been blood-bonded to a Dominion citizen, let alone a Blood-Marshal. Kra'Vex adjusted her repaired armor, now gleaming and functional again. You will be the first human to set foot on the Dominion homeworld, not as an outsider, but as Tzari kin. Quinn was still processing the implications when the first shuttle broke atmosphere. An elegant, predatory-looking craft that settled on the plain near the outpost with precision that spoke of advanced technology. Well, he sighed, gathering the small bag of personal effects and research data he'd hastily packed. At least my obituary will be interesting. Xenobotanist accidentally becomes alien blood brother, disappears into space, plants unaffected. The shuttle's ramp extended, and Quinn got his first look at other Tzari. Like Kra'Vex, they were tall, reptilian humanoids with varied scale colorations and elaborate armor. Unlike Kra'Vex, their body language radiated suspicion and hostility, until they saw her. The change was immediate and dramatic. The warriors dropped to one knee, heads bowed, as Kra'Vex strode forward. She spoke rapidly in their native language, gesturing occasionally toward Quinn. The warrior's head snapped up, golden eyes fixing on the human with expressions of what could only be described as shock. One began to object, voice rising, until Kra'Vex cut them off with a sharp gesture and words that needed no translation to convey their authority. She turned back to Quinn. Come, Bloodgiver, the Dominion awaits. Quinn swallowed hard. Just to be clear, I'm not walking into some kind of sacrificial situation, am I? Because my personal policy on ritual sacrifice is firmly negative. Kra'Vex made that sound again, definitely a laugh. The opposite. You are to be honored beyond any human in history. She extended a clawed hand. Trust the blood bond, Quinn, who is called Maddox. Well, when you put it that way. Quinn took her hand and stepped toward the shuttle, pausing only to activate the Outpost automated message. Gone to alien homeworld, back, eventually. Plants need watering twice weekly. The journey to the Tzari fleet was brief, but Quinn's first sight of their primary vessel knocked the breath from his lungs. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a small city, and constructed of materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal while maintaining perfect structural integrity. That's impressive, he managed, aware he was understating things dramatically. A standard Dominion carrier, Kra'Vex replied, clearly enjoying his reaction. The fleet flagship is significantly larger. The shuttle docked with the carrier, and Quinn found himself escorted through corridors of the same flowing metal, past chambers filled with technology he couldn't begin to comprehend, and increasingly large groups of Tzari who stopped and stared at the human in their midst. Whispers followed them, the words Bloodgiver and Marshal Bond repeated, with tones ranging from awe to disbelief to outrage. I'm causing quite a stir, Quinn observed quietly. You are impossible, Kra'Vex replied. A paradox made flesh. The blood bond should not function across species. Yet here we are. Here we are, she agreed, leading him into what appeared to be a command center. More Tzari, these with even more elaborate armor and markings, turned to stare. One step forward, clearly a high-ranking official based on the deference shown by others. Blood-Marshal, they addressed Kra'Vex. Explain this. Aberration. Kra'Vex straightened to her full height, towering even among her own kind. Fleet Commander Trazkor, I present Queen who is called Mad, xenobiologist of Earth, and my blood bonded. The command center erupted in hisses and clicks of what Quinn assumed was disbelief and possibly outrage. The fleet commander silenced them with a gesture, then stalked forward to examine Quinn with unnerving intensity. Impossible, Trazkor declared. The blood bond cannot cross species barriers. It is sacred to the Tzari alone. Test the bond, Kra'Vex challenged. See for yourself. What followed was deeply uncomfortable for Quinn. A series of scans, blood draws, and examinations by Tzari, who appeared to be medical specialists. Throughout it all, Kra'Vex remained nearby, her presence somehow reassuring despite being the cause of his current predicament. Finally, the specialists conferred with the fleet commander, who turned back to them with what Quinn was learning to recognize as the Tzari equivalent of shocked disbelief. The bond is genuine, Trazcor announced. The human's cellular structure shows Tzari markers. The bond has altered him at the most fundamental level. The fleet commander's gaze fixed on Quinn. Do you understand what this means, human? I'm beginning to get the impression it's rather significant, Quinn replied, aiming for diplomatic but landing somewhere closer to sarcastic. It means, said a new voice, that the cosmic confluence was correct. As always, the entire command center dropped to kneeling positions as a new Tzari entered, smaller than the warriors with scales of iridescent white and gold, wearing robes rather than armor. Even Quinn could sense the authority radiating from this being. Sovereign Seer, Kra'Vex acknowledged, head bowed. Rise, Blood-Marshal. The Sovereign Seer approached Quinn without ceremony. So you are the one. The impossible bridge between worlds. I'm a botanist, actually, Quinn replied, feeling the absurd need to clarify. The bridge between worlds thing was more of an impromptu medical decision than a career choice. The Sovereign Seer made the now familiar sound of Tzari laughter. You speak as the prophecies foretold, the one who gives blood freely, who sees beyond scales to the life beneath. They turned to address the command center. The confluence has guided the Blood-Marshal to this being for a purpose. The Dominion will honor the blood bond as is our sacred duty. And just like that, Quinn found himself not just accepted but venerated, a development he found far more alarming than hostility. I feel I should mention, he said as they prepared to make the jump to Tzari space, that I'm really not qualified for whatever cosmic role you think I'm fulfilling. I study plants. Occasionally I keep them alive. More often than not, I accidentally kill them through enthusiastic overwatering. The confluence does not make mistakes, the Sovereign Seer replied serenely. You will understand when we reach Tzari Khan. Tzari Khan, as it turned out, was the kind of planet that made xenobiologists wake up in cold sweats from dreams too beautiful to be real. A world of breathtaking biodiversity, with architecture that blended seamlessly into natural formations in ways human engineers could only fantasize about. The Tzari civilization spread across the planet's surface in elegant organic structures that resembled nothing so much as a forest made of living metal and crystal. Technology and nature existed in perfect harmony, each enhancing rather than replacing the other. Quinn had approximately 3 seconds to appreciate this wonder before the true implications of his honor became clear. As the flagship descended toward what appeared to be a vast ceremonial plaza, he could see thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of Tzari gathered below. Please tell me this isn't all for me, he said weakly. Kra'Vex, resplendent in formal armor that made her previous battle gear look positively casual, gave him a look that confirmed his fears. The blood bonding of a Dominion Blood-Marshal is always a significant event. The fact that you are human makes it historic. Historic, Quinn echoed faintly. Wonderful. And what exactly is expected of me during this historic event? Because my public speaking skills are limited to explaining why certain fungi shouldn't be touched without protective gloves. You will present yourself to the Sovereign Clutch alongside me. The blood bond will be formally acknowledged. You will be granted the rights and privileges of a Dominion citizen of the Marshal caste. Kra'Vex paused. And then there will be feasting. Right, simple. Quinn straightened his shoulders. Just to clarify, this isn't some elaborate setup where I'm actually the main course at the feast. Kra'Vex blinked those golden eyes slowly. The Tzari have not practiced cannibalism for at least 7 generations and never with blood-bonded kin. That's not as reassuring as you might think. The ceremonial procession was every bit as overwhelming as Quinn had feared. He walked beside Kra'Vex through corridors formed by thousands of Tzari citizens, all watching with those unnerving golden eyes. Some showed curiosity, others reverence, and a few unmistakable hostility. But none interfered as they made their way to an enormous structure that resembled a cross between a cathedral and a living tree. Inside, upon a raised dais, waited more of the white-scaled Tzari like the sovereign seer. The ruling caste, Quinn presumed. Their robes were elaborately decorated with symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched. The ceremony itself was conducted in the Tzari language, with Kra'Vex occasionally translating key points for Quinn's benefit. He gathered that he was being formally recognized as blood of their blood, with all the rights, privileges, and obligations that entailed. What caught him entirely by surprise was the final pronouncement. As is tradition when a Blood-Marshal takes a bond of choice, Kra'Vex translated, looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable, "You are being granted territory equal to your status." "Territory?" Quinn whispered back. "Like a house?" "Like a planet," Kra'Vex replied. "Specifically the one you call Earth." Quinn blinked, then blinked again. "I'm sorry, I think I misheard. It sounded like you said they're giving me Earth." "Not giving, recognizing your dominion over it, as is your right as my blood-bonded." Kra'Vex shifted subtly. "It is symbolic, of course. The Tzari dominion acknowledges your world as protected territory under your governance, and by extension, under dominion protection. So, they're not actually giving me ownership of Earth." "The concept doesn't translate precisely," Kra'Vex admitted. "But essentially your world has just become the first non-Tzari planet to receive protectorate status within the Dominion. No Tzari may harm it or its inhabitants. Any aggression against Earth is considered aggression against the Dominion itself." Quinn stared at the assembled Tzari nobility, all watching him expectantly. "They've just made Earth untouchable to any species that doesn't want to go to war with one of the most advanced civilizations I've ever seen." "Yes? Because I gave you a blood transfusion. Because you saved my life at risk of your own, sharing your essence freely with no expectation of return," Kra'Vex corrected. "Such actions have meaning, Quinn, who is called mad. Among the Tzari they have the greatest meaning of all." Quinn thought of Earth's history, the endless conflicts, the power struggles, the vulnerability of a species just beginning to reach for the stars, in a galaxy they now knew contained both wonders and terrors beyond imagination. And now, through the most improbable sequence of events, he had apparently secured his planet the protection of a civilization capable of ensuring its survival. All because he couldn't let a wounded alien die on his laboratory floor. "What am I supposed to say?" he whispered to Kra'Vex. "Among the Tzari, it is customary to acknowledge the honor with a blood oath of loyalty," she replied. Quinn straightened his shoulders and stepped forward. "I am not Tzari," he began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber, "but I understand honor. I understand loyalty. And I understand that today, through accident or destiny, our peoples have been connected in a way neither of us could have imagined." He extended his arm, showing the small mark where the transfusion needle had been. "My blood flows in the veins of Blood-Marshal Kra'Vex. Her life is my life, her honor is my honor, and the bond between us extends to the bond between our worlds." The chamber erupted in the resonant multi-ton sound of Tzari approval. The sovereign seer stepped forward, touching a ceremonial blade first to Quinn's arm, then to their own. "The bond is acknowledged," they proclaimed in carefully articulated human speech. "Earth stands under Tzari protection from this day until the stars themselves grow cold." The feast that followed was both magnificent and slightly terrifying, featuring foods Quinn was fairly certain no human had ever consumed before. He approached each new dish with the same spirit of scientific inquiry and reckless disregard for personal safety that had landed him in this situation to begin with. Only once, when presented with something that was definitely still moving, did he lean over to Kra'Vex and whisper, "Will this kill me?" She considered the writhing delicacy. "Unlikely. The blood bond has already altered your physiology to be more compatible with Tzari biology, though it might cause some digestive distress. Wonderful! Quinn gamely took a bite, found it not entirely unpleasant, and added it to his mental catalogue of things no xenobiologist has ever documented before. As the celebration continued around them, Kra'Vex leaned closer. You should know that as my blood bonded, you have responsibilities as well as privileges. The Dominion will expect you to serve as liaison between our peoples, to facilitate understanding, to prevent conflicts. Quinn laughed softly. So I've gone from studying plants on a remote outpost to interstellar diplomat in the span of 3 days. My doctoral advisor is going to be insufferable about this. The path of fate is rarely straight, Kra'Vex replied, something like fondness in her golden eyes. But I believe the confluence chose well in guiding me to your outpost. I'm still not convinced this wasn't all a cosmic accident, Quinn admitted. But I'm starting to think that might not matter. Kra'Vex made the now familiar sound of Tzari laughter. Perhaps that is your first lesson in Tzari philosophy, blood brother. In the grand design of the universe, there are no accidents, only paths we did not yet know we were meant to walk. Quinn raised his glass, filled with something that shimmered like liquid starlight and tasted vaguely of cinnamon and ozone, in a toast. To unexpected paths, then, and to the remarkable discovery that sometimes the most profound connections begin with the simplest acts of compassion. As the celebration continued around them, Dr. Maddox Quinn, xenobotanist, accidental diplomat, and now apparently honorary Tzari of the Marshal caste, found himself wondering how exactly he was going to explain in his next research report that he'd returned from studying plants with an alien civilization's protection and a 7-foot reptilian blood sister. The paperwork alone would be nightmarish, but watching the Tzari celebrate around him, seeing the genuine connection forming between species that until days ago had never met, Quinn couldn't bring himself to regret a single impulsive decision. Sometimes, it seemed, the universe rewarded madness in the most unexpected ways.